Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats Read podcast. My name's Coffee, I'm your host, and today we're reading chapters 16 through 19 of The Darkest Hour. Now, where we last left off, Firestar had discovered from Mistyfoot that TigerStar had essentially joined ShadowClan and RiverClan together. Graystripe is very worried about his kits and how they're doing over there. So he and Firestar go over to check on the kits and just see if they're alright. When they get there, TigerStar has created this massive hill of bones to stand on as his throne. He completely denounces half-clan cats. Stonefur, who is Stormpaw's mentor, stands up for the kits. TigerStar gives him a dilemma. Either Stonefur himself can be killed, or he can kill his own apprentice, Stormpaw. Firestar, Graystripe, and Ravenpaw are spying on all of this, and they can't rush in and do anything, as unfortunately, in the last page or two of the chapter, Stonefur is killed by Blackfoot because Darkstripe could not get a handle on things. So, bad times for everyone involved. We're going to start out with chapter 16, quote, "No." Graystripe's voice rasped in his throat. Firestar pressed closer to his friend, sharing his grief at Stonefur's death and his anger that the RiverClan warrior's courage had been worth nothing in an unfair fight. Blackfoot looked down at Stonefur's body in satisfaction. Darkstripe whirled to confront the two apprentices. "TigerStar," he meowed. "Let me kill them." Graystripe would have sprung forward then, in spite of anything Firestar could do, but before he could move, TigerStar shook his battle-scarred head. "Really, Darkstripe? A prisoner can defeat you, but you think you can take on two apprentices? I'm glad to see that he's still just a worm to TigerStar. That's what you get, loser. Nobody likes you." Darkstripe bowed his head in shame. His leader's eyes narrowed coldly as he stared at the two young cats. They were huddled together, trembling with shock. They hardly seemed to realize that their own lives were hanging by a hair. "No," TigerStar meowed at last. "For now, I will let them live. They may be useful to me alive." Firestar flashed a look at Graystripe, who returned his glance with mingled relief and apprehension in his eyes. TigerStar summoned Jagged Tooth. "Take the apprentices back to their prison." The ShadowClan warrior dipped his head and herded the two stunned cats away through the reeds. Graystripe's hungry gaze followed them out of sight. "The meeting is at an end," TigerStar declared. At once the cats in the clearing began to slip away. TigerStar leaped down from the bone hill and vanished into the reeds, flanked by Blackfoot and Darkstripe. Eventually only Leopardstar was left. She padded forward until she stood over the broken body of her former deputy. Slowly she bent her head and nosed Stonefur's torn gray pelt. If she meowed a last farewell, Firestar did not hear it, and after a moment she turned and followed TigerStar through the reeds. She doesn't get to feel sad after not standing up for her own deputy and letting him be murdered. But also, I'm kind of wondering if, what went through her head to allow this. They should write a book about this. They did. It's called Leopardstar's Honor. We're gonna read it at some point. "Now!" Graystripe sprang to his paws. "Firestar, we've got to rescue my kids." "Yes, but don't go rushing off," Firestar warned him. "We have to make sure all the cats have gone." His friend's body was quivering with suppressed tension. "I don't care," he spat. "If they try to stop us, I'll rip them all apart." "The kits are safe for the moment," murmured Ravenpaw. "There's no need to take risks." Firestar cautiously raised his head above the level of the reeds. By now it was quite dark. The only light came from Silverpelt and a pale glow from the moon low in the sky. The ShadowClan and RiverClan scents were rapidly fading. The only sound was the dry rustle of wind in the reeds. Crouching down again, Firestar murmured, "They've gone for now. This is our chance. We've got to find where they're keeping the apprentices and get them away," Graystripe interrupted. "Whatever it takes." Firestar nodded. "Ravenpaw, are you up for it? It will be dangerous." The loner's eyes widened. "You think I'd leave after we saw that? No way. I'm with you, Firestar." "Good." Firestar blinked in gratitude. "I thought you would be." He carefully leads the cats into the clearing. He knows it's illegal to be trespassing like this on enemy clan territory, but he doesn't know how StarClan could do nothing to save Stonefur. Well, yes, they're not all powerful, they're just spirits. Christians discover that God can't do anything. I mean, what? No offense to any Christians, by the way. I'm not religious. I don't believe there is a God who sees and controls everything. I think things just happen. That's my personal beliefs. But I only made that joke about Christians because, especially in America, a lot of Christians use their religion and what's quote-unquote written in the Bible to be very bigoted and exclusionary towards minorities. So, I'm not a big fan of Christians right now, but respect to you if you have that religion and you don't use it to be bad to other people. Anyway, continuing on, they approach the pile of rotting prey, disgusted, when Ravenpaw has the idea to roll in it to disguise their scent. Still thinking like a warrior, Firestar observes. They venture deeper into RiverClan territory, following Jaggedtooth's scent. They go across RiverClan land to where farmland starts and the reeds thin out. They come to a grassy hill that has a dark hole about halfway up, and Jaggedtooth is guarding it. Quote, "There are paw prints leading into that hole," Firestar murmured. Graystripe lifted his muzzle to taste the air and let out a faint sound of disgust. "Sick cats," he meowed quietly. "You're right, Firestar. This is the place." He bared his teeth. "Jaggedtooth is mine." "No." Firestar's tail whipped out, signaling his friend to stay where he was. "We can't afford a fight. The noise would bring every cat in the territory. We have to get rid of him another way." "I can do that." Ravenpaw's paws anxiously kneaded the ground, but his expression was determined. "He'll recognize you two, but he doesn't know me." Firestar hesitated, then nodded. "How will you do it?" "I've got a plan." Ravenpaw's eyes shone with anticipation, and Firestar realized that the loner was almost relishing the danger, as if he had missed having a chance to use his warrior skills. "Don't worry, it'll be fine," the black cat assured him. Straightening up, he strolled out of the reeds and up the slope, his head and tail held high. Jaggedtooth got up and paced forward to meet him, the tabby fur on his neck bristling. Firestar gathered himself, ready to spring if the ShadowClan warrior attacked. But though Jaggedtooth looked aggressive, he did nothing more than give Ravenpaw a suspicious sniff. "I don't know you," he growled. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "Think you know all the RiverClan cats, do you?" Ravenpaw inquired coolly. "I've got a message from TigerStar." Jaggedtooth grunted, and his whiskers twitched as he sniffed Ravenpaw again. "Great StarClan, you stink." "You don't smell so pleasant yourself," Ravenpaw retorted. "Do you want this message, or don't you?" Firestar and Graystripe exchanged a glance as Jaggedtooth hesitated. Firestar felt his heart thud painfully against his ribs. "Go on, then," the ShadowClan warrior meowed at last. "TigerStar wants you to go to him at once," mewed Ravenpaw. "He sent me to take your place guarding the prisoners." "What?" Jaggedtooth lashed his tail in disbelief. "Only ShadowClan guards the prisoners. You RiverClan cats are all too soft. Why did TigerStar send you and not one of our own clan?" Firestar flinched. Ravenpaw had made a potentially fatal mistake. But the loner didn't seem bothered. Turning away, he meowed. "I thought we were supposed to be all one clan now. But suit yourself. I'll tell TigerStar you wouldn't come." "No, wait." Jaggedtooth twitched his ears. "I didn't say that. If TigerStar wants me, where is he then?" "Over there." Ravenpaw pointed with his tail in the direction of the RiverClan camp. "He had Darkstripe and Blackfoot with him." Jaggedtooth made up his mind. "Right," he muttered. "But you stay out here till I get back. If I smell your stink inside the hole, I'll rip your fur off." He headed down the slope. Ravenpaw watched him go, then padded up and sat down just outside the hole. Firestar and Graystripe crouched in the reeds as Jaggedtooth passed within a couple of tail lengths of them. He was hurrying now, and did not even stop to scent the air as he vanished down the path. Jaggedtooth would fall for the gullible is written on the ceiling trick. So the three of them run to the hole, immediately scenting the kits inside. Graystripe rushes in, and Firestar pauses to praise Ravenpaw. Ravenpaw says, "It was easy, he's such a stupid furball." Perfect. And Firestar tells him to keep a lookout. The hole is a long, narrow passage with a stale stench of fox. Try saying that 5 times fast. Stale stench of fox. An overwhelming fear scent of cats. Quote, "The passage led steadily downward. Before he reached the end of it, Firestar heard the sound of scuffling and surprised mews. One of the apprentices called out, 'Father, is it really you?' A moment later, Firestar could no longer feel his fur brushing the passage walls on either side. His next step brought him up against a cat's haunches. He recognized Graystripe by his scent. The scent of the 2 apprentices was stronger than ever, and with a jolt of relief, Firestar recognized another cat. "Mistyfoot," he exclaimed. "Thanks StarClan we found you." "Is that Firestar?" Mistyfoot's voice was hoarse, close to his ear. "What are you doing here?" "It's a long story," Firestar replied. "I'll tell you everything, but first we have to get out of here. Graystripe, are you ready?" A tense mew of agreement came from his friend. Though Firestar couldn't see him, he could picture him huddled close to Featherpaw and Stormpaw. "Let's go," Firestar meowed, turning with difficulty in the narrow mouth of the underground den. "Mistyfoot, we're going to take you all back to ThunderClan with us." Remembering how weak Stonefur and the apprentices had looked, he added, "Can you make it that far?" "Once I'm out of this hole, I can make it anywhere," Mistyfoot mewed determinedly. "So can we," added Featherpaw. "That's great." "Mistyfoot, I'm so sorry, but we couldn't rescue Stonefur," Firestar began, looking for words to tell the she-cat about her brother's death. "I already know," meowed Mistyfoot, her voice ragged with grief. "The apprentices told me. They say he died bravely. Very bravely. All StarClan will honor him." Firestar pushed his muzzle into Mistyfoot's fur, a gesture of comfort. "Come on, we'll make sure he didn't die for nothing. TigerStar will not hurt you as well." His heart thudding with fear, Firestar scrabbled his way back up the tunnel. At the top he paused to check that it was safe to emerge, then led the way into the open. He felt as if the rancid stench of the prison would cling to his fur forever. Ravenpaw took his place at the back of the group, keeping a lookout as they crept down the slope. Silent as shadows, the cats followed the path through the reeds until they came to the clearing again. It was empty, the bone hill casting its ominous shadow as far as the body of Stonefur lying still in the moonlight. Mistyfoot went over to her brother and bent her head to nose his fur. Outside the darkness of her prison, Firestar saw that she was as skinny and unkempt as the dead warrior, every rib showing, her fur matted and her eyes dull with suffering. Stonefur, she murmured. What will I do without you? Firestar's fur bristled with tension as he listened for the sound of approaching cats, but he forced himself to give Mistyfoot time to mourn. They could not take Stonefur's body with them for the proper warrior's vigil. This was Mistyfoot's last farewell. Stormpaw, who had been Stonefur's apprentice, approached as well. He touched his nose to his mentor's head before patting back to stand beside his father. Firestar could not help remembering Bluestar and how much she had loved her lost kits. Had she been here, he wondered, to lead her son to StarClan? She and Stonefur both died bravely, their cruel deaths caused by TigerStar's evil ambition. Every hair on Firestar's pelt pricked with his longing to confront the Dark Tabby warrior and make him pay for his crimes. Firestar, we have to go, Graystripe hissed, the whites of his eyes bright in the half-light. His words roused Mistyfoot. Before Firestar could reply, she raised her head, gave Stonefur one last loving look, and padded over to where the others were waiting for her. Firestar set a brisk pace back toward the river, feeling himself relax as the stench of the bone hill and the scattered prey began to fade. Graystripe helped the two apprentices along, encouraging them with gentle nudges and mews. Mistyfoot kept up bravely, limping on paws cracked and sore after her imprisonment, while Ravenpaw stayed at the rear, his ears tilted back for the sounds of pursuit. The night was silent except for the murmur of water, and by the time the river came in sight they had not encountered any other cats. Turning downstream toward the stepping stones, Firestar dared to hope that they would escape undetected. Then a distant yowling sounded through the reeds, and the 6 cats froze in their tracks. "The prisoners have escaped!" Uh-oh. It's the end of Chapter 16. Chapter 17. Quote. "Quick, the stepping stones," Firestar hissed. Alone, the ThunderClan cats could have raced easily out of danger, but none of them would abandon the prisoners. Graystripe fell back to join Ravenpaw as rear guard, while Firestar tried to urge on the RiverClan cats. "You'll have to leave us," Mistyfoot gasped. "There's no sense in all of us being captured." "Never," snarled Graystripe. "We're all in this together." By now they were bounding alongside the river, the RiverClan cats stumbling in their efforts to keep up. Firestar could already see the ripples in the water where the current was broken by the stepping stones. But the yowling behind them grew louder, and when he turned his head to draw in a rapid gulp of air, he could taste the scent of ShadowClan. "Great StarClan," he whispered. "They're catching up." None of the pursuing cats had appeared yet by the time they reached the stepping stones. Firestar leaped onto the first stone, then the second, and gestured with his tail for Mistyfoot to follow. "Hurry," he urged. Mistyfoot bent her hind legs and leaped, staggering as her paws hit the slippery surface, but managing to keep her balance. The two apprentices came next. Firestar stopped when he was halfway across and waited, the river water lapping his paws, while the other cats leaped out behind him. Because the RiverClan cats were so weak, they were agonizingly slow, bracing themselves for each leap. Mistyfoot reached him first, and Firestar edged to the side of the stone to let her go past. The two apprentices were still some way behind. Firestar's claws scraped the rough stone in his impatience, though he tried to stay calm. When the first dark shapes of pursuing cats slipped out of the reeds, he forced himself to say nothing. Stormpaw was just nerving himself to leap. Firestar locked his gaze with the younger cats. "Come on," he mewed steadily. "You're doing fine." But as her brother gathered himself, Featherpaw, a couple of stones behind him, spotted the ShadowClan warriors racing along the riverbank. "They're coming!" she yelled. Caught off balance, Stormpaw misjudged the distance and fell short. His forepaws landed on the stone, but his hindquarters splashed into the river. The current bubbled around him, dragging at his thick fur as he scrabbled to pull himself to safety. "I'm slipping!" he gasped. "I can't hold on!" Firestar jumped back onto the previous stone, barely managing to balance in the space left by Stormpaw's clawing forepaws. He fastened his teeth in the apprentice's scruff just as the younger cat lost his grip and slid backward into the river. For a few heartbeats, Firestar felt his own paws sliding on the smooth rock under Stormpaw's weight and the force of the current. Then he spotted Graystripe swimming up behind his son, paws thrusting strongly through the icy water. The gray warrior shoved his shoulder underneath Stormpaw and heaved him upward. Firestar managed to haul the apprentice out to crouch shivering on the rock. Glancing toward the RiverClan shore, Firestar saw Ravenpaw urging Featherpaw onto the next stone, getting his own paws wet to leave her space to stand on the driest part. Behind them, the pursuing cats had reached the first stone. Blackfoot was in the lead, flanked by Jaggedtooth and 3 or 4 others. Too many to fight, Firestar realized. "Come on," he yelled. "Hurry!" He nudged the shivering Stormpaw. "Keep going! Follow Mistyfoot!" Blackfoot crouched, ready to spring, his eyes fixed on the stepping stone where Ravenpaw had put himself between Featherpaw and the ShadowClan warrior. Firestar's belly clenched. The loner was brave, but his training days were far behind him, and he would be no match for a seasoned warrior like TigerStar's deputy. Graystripe began swimming back toward Ravenpaw. A wild screech split the air as the rest of the ShadowClan warriors spread along the bank in a menacing line. Keep going, Firestar gasped to Mistyfoot. Take Stormpaw with you. I'm going back. But before he could move, a fierce battle yell went up from the forest to the ThunderClan side of the river. Firestar saw 3 shapes streaking out of the undergrowth. Cloudtail with Sandstorm and Thornclaw just behind him. Thanks, StarClan, he began, breaking off as Cloudtail leaped toward the river, eyes blazing and claws extended. He was heading straight for Mistyfoot, who was just jumping from the last stone onto the bank. Firestar raced across the remaining stones to intercept the White Warrior, barreling onto his side and knocking him off his paws. Mouth brain, he snapped. The enemy is back there. He jerked his head toward the middle of the river, where Ravenpaw and Graystripe were tussling with Blackfoot on the central stone. Stormpaw was nerving himself for the last leap onto the bank, while Featherpaw huddled 2 or 3 stones farther back. Sandstorm and Thornclaw launched themselves across the stones to face the ShadowClan warriors, the 2 apprentices cowering at the edge of their stones to let them pass. Muttering sorry to Mistyfoot, Cloudtail sprang after them. Firestar bunched his muscles to follow, but before he leaped, he saw Blackfoot slip off the stone to be swept away in the current. He ducked briefly below the surface of the water, then reappeared swimming clumsily back toward the RiverClan side, his ears flat against his head. The 3 ThunderClan warriors stood crowded together on one stone, digging in their claws and growling fiercely at the remaining pursuers. Massive aura loss for Blackfoot. He's trying to be big and menacing, but he falls in the river and then can't swim. You'll come no farther if you want to stay alive, snarled Sandstorm. The ShadowClan warriors milled about uncertainly on the first 2 or 3 stones. Unused to the river, they were unsteady on their paws and clearly unwilling to join battle with the furious ThunderClan cats. Get back, Blackfoot yelled as he clambered onto the bank, his fur streaming. Let them escape, they're only half-clan crow food. His warriors seemed happy to obey, and within moments all the ShadowClan cats had vanished into the reeds. Firestar concentrated on helping the 2 apprentices finish crossing. Graystripe and Ravenpaw followed closely behind. Checking his cats for wounds, Firestar saw that Graystripe had lost a clump of fur from one shoulder, and Ravenpaw's left ear was bleeding, but otherwise they seemed unhurt. Well done, all of you, he meowed, turning to the other ThunderClan warriors. I was never so glad to see any cats as when you 3 came out of the forest. What brought you here? You did, Cloudtail panted. You ordered extra patrols to watch the border. Lucky for you that we came along when we did. Firestar felt his legs go weak with relief. StarClan had sent the patrol at just the right moment. Okay, he meowed. We better get back to camp. These 3 cats need to rest. Ravenpaw, you better come too and let Cinderpelt look at that ear. Firestar stayed at the rear in case the ShadowClan warriors decided to cross the river after all, but behind them everything was quiet. After a few moments, Sandstorm dropped back to join him. What happened? She asked. What are these RiverClan cats doing here? Firestar paused to give her ear a quick lick. They were prisoners, he explained. If we'd left them there, TigerStar would have killed them. Sandstorm turned her green gaze on him, horrified. Why? Because their parents came from different clans, Firestar explained. TigerStar says half-clan cats aren't fit to live in any clan. But his own kids are half-clan, Sandstorm protested. Firestar shook his head. No, because TigerStar was a ThunderClan cat when they were born. At least that would be his excuse. You don't think that the great TigerStar would father anything but pure-blooded kits, do you? The shock and disgust in Sandstorm's eyes deepened, then turned to sympathy as she looked at the RiverClan cats. Poor things, she murmured. Will you let them stay in ThunderClan? Firestar nodded. What else can we do? The moon was high and bathing the ravine in a silvery light by the time that Firestar and the others reached the camp. Firestar could hardly believe that everything could be so peaceful here, only a short distance from the blood-stained clearing of the Bone Hill and all the violence unleashed by TigerStar's ambition. But as he emerged from the gorse tunnel into the camp, the illusion of peace was shattered. Whitestorm came hurrying toward him with Brackenfur at his heels. The younger warrior looked distraught. Thanks, StarClan, you're back, Firestar, he exclaimed. It's Tawnypaw. She's disappeared. If it ain't one thing, it's another. That's the end of chapter 17. Getting right into chapter 18. Quote, disappeared? Firestar echoed in alarm. What happened? We're not sure. Whitestorm was calmer than Brackenfur, but his eyes gave away his concern. It was Bramblepaw who first said he couldn't find her. I thought he was making a fuss about nothing, but we searched the camp. She isn't here, and no cat saw her leave. It's my fault, Brackenfur broke in. I'm her mentor. It's not your fault, Whitestorm assured him. I sent you on hunting patrol. No cat expects you to be in 2 places at once. Brackenfur shook his head despairingly. Fetch Bramblepaw, Firestar ordered. Thornclaw bounded off at once to the apprentice's den. While he waited, Firestar sent Ravenpaw and the 3 RiverClan cats to see Cinderpelt. Graystripe went with them to explain what had happened and to assure himself that his kits would be all right. Though the Grey Warrior was cold and drenched from the icy river, all his concern was for his kits, and as they crossed the clearing, he stuck close to their side like a bulky shadow. I don't know what to think, meowed Whitestorm when they had gone. Maybe Tawnypaw got some idea into her head and went off by herself. She could be trapped or injured somewhere, or she could be in ShadowClan, Brackenfur interrupted, his fur bristling. TigerStar could have stolen her. But TigerStar was over in RiverClan territory, Firestar told them quietly. So were Blackfoot and Darkstripe. He saw Whitestorm's ears twitch in surprise, and he knew he would have to explain everything to his deputy as soon as possible. He could have sent some other cat to do his dirty work, Cloudtail put in. Have you scented ShadowClan cats around the camp? Firestar asked Whitestorm. Or RiverClan? The White Warrior shook his head. No cats but our own, Firestar. Then it sounds as if she left willingly, Firestar meowed. Perhaps she just felt like hunting by herself for a change. But he couldn't help remembering the incident before he left the camp, when Tawnypaw had been furious with Smallier for comparing her with her father. Firestar wondered if he had misjudged how hurt she had felt. He broke off his thoughts as Bramblepaw came up. Tell me what Tawnypaw did before she disappeared, Firestar ordered. Just the usual apprentice chores. Bramblepaw sounded anxious. His amber eyes were wide and confused. We changed the elders' bedding and brought them fresh kill, and I went to get some mouse bile from Cinderpelt to put on a tick in Smallier's fur. When I came back, Tawnypaw had gone, and I hadn't seen her since. Where have you looked so far? I went back to where we got the moss for the bedding, but she wasn't there, his apprentice replied. And I checked the training hollow. Firestar nodded. Did you ask the elders if she said anything to them? I did, replied Whitestorm, but they couldn't remember anything out of the ordinary. And what about Goldenflower? Firestar went on. Did Tawnypaw say anything to her? Whitestorm shook his head. She was frantic. I sent her with mouse fur to search toward tall pines. They aren't back yet. Did you try to track Tawnypaw? Firestar asked. Yes, of course, Brackenfur replied. We tracked her to the top of the ravine, but after that we lost the scent. Firestar hesitated. More than anything, he wanted to believe that there was an easy explanation for Tawnypaw's absence. StarClan forbid he should wish a young cat to be lying injured somewhere, but even that would be preferable to his worst fears, that Tawnypaw had gone willingly to join her father. I'll try again, he decided. It's probably too late, but I'll come with you, Cloudtail offered. Firestar gave him a nod of gratitude. Cloudtail was one of the best trackers in the clan. Okay, he meowed. Sandstorm, Thornclaw, you come too. Firestar leads the way out of the camp. He's exhausted. He treks the scent to the top of the ravine, as Brackenfur had done. He can't help but worry that Tawnypaw did, in fact, try and leave to join ShadowClan. Suddenly, Cloudtail yells to them that he picked up the scent, and the patrol rushes to join him. They picked it up, just to lose it again, and it starts raining, so there's no chance of finding it now. Sandstorm points out that it looks like she was going to 4 trees, which further confirms Firestar's fear that she might have gone to join ShadowClan, because cats usually go through 4 trees to cross over borders. Quote, when the patrol returned to camp, Brackenfur and Bramblepaw were still anxiously waiting in the clearing. They had been joined by Tawnypaw's mother, Goldenflower, and Mousefur. All 4 cats looked bedraggled and despairing in the rain that was falling more heavily now. Well, Goldenflower asked as Firestar came up to her. What did you find? Nothing, Firestar meowed quietly. We don't know where she is. Then why aren't you still out there looking? Goldenflower's voice was sharp. Firestar shook his head. There's nothing more we can do in the dark and the rain. She could be anywhere. You don't care, do you? Goldenflower's meow rose, high-pitched with anger. You think she left deliberately. You never trusted her. Firestar struggled to answer, knowing that her accusation was half true. But Goldenflower did not wait. Instead, she spun around and disappeared beneath the branches of the warrior's den. Wait, Firestar called, but she ignored him. She doesn't know what she's saying, Sandstorm meowed sympathetically. I'll go and calm her down. She slipped into the den behind Goldenflower. Tired and discouraged, Firestar turned to Bramblepaw, expecting a similar accusation from him. But his apprentice was standing quietly, and the look in his amber eyes was unreadable. It's okay, Firestar, he meowed. I know you did all you could. Thank you. Head down and tail drooping, he made his way back to the apprentice's den. Poor little baby. Firestar is wanting nothing more than to sleep, but he needs to check on his RiverClan friends. Dawn is approaching, and he begins to doubt his leadership. Reflecting on Darkstripe's exile, Tawnypaw's disappearance, and the whole forest divided, he begins to wonder if the lion's main vision was wrong, and that he was the wrong cat to choose for this. Quote, standing on the high rock, Firestar watched as his clan emerged from their dens. It was the morning after his expedition to RiverClan territory, and he had called a meeting to tell his warriors exactly what had happened, and to explain the presence of the 3 RiverClan cats. Mistyfoot and the 2 apprentices were sitting at the base of the high rock with Graystripe and Cinderpelt. Firestar was pleased to see that they already looked stronger, as if their energy was coming back after a good meal and with Cinderpelt's care. Ravenpaw had left at dawn, his injured ears swathed in cobweb, and a gleam in his eye as he recalled the battle on the stepping stones. Amazing how my old training came back to me, he meowed to Firestar. I hadn't forgotten the fighting moves. You did brilliantly, Firestar purred. You're a real friend to ThunderClan. Now that TigerStar is rising to power, I think ThunderClan needs all the friends it can get, the loner mewed seriously. Ravenpaw had spent a few moments by Bluestar's grave and then set out for the farm near Highstones. Firestar wondered if he would need to call on Ravenpaw for help again. TigerStar's enemies would have to unite to drive him out of the forest. Yet Firestar knew that the final confrontation must be his alone. He waited until all the clan cats had settled themselves around the high rock, and then began to speak. "You've all heard by now that Graystripe, Ravenpaw, and I went over to WindClan territory last night." He described the bone hill and the rotting prey strewn around the clearing, and how TigerStar had whipped up the hatred of his warriors against half-clans, cats whose parents came from 2 different clans. Firestar's voice shook as he described the murder of Stonefur, and the cats below him shuddered and flattened themselves against the ground in sympathy and terror. Dustpelt growled, "Why aren't we attacking ShadowClan right now, then, for revenge?" "Because it's not as simple as that," Firestar replied. "ThunderClan alone can't take on ShadowClan and RiverClan combined and expect to win." "We can have a good try," retorted Cloudtail, springing to his paws. "But where would we attack?" asked Firestar. "There will be warriors from both clans in the RiverClan camp, and I don't expect TigerStar has left the ShadowClan camp unguarded." "I feel just the same as you," he went on. "I don't like what TigerStar is doing, and I'm afraid of what he might do in the future. I'd like to know what StarClan wants us to do, but so far I've had no word from them. Cinderpelt, have they spoken to you?" The Medicine Cat glanced up at him. "No, not yet." With an angry flick of his ears, Cloudtail sat down again, and Brightheart rubbed against his shoulder to calm him down. In the brief pause, Firestar wondered if it was true to say that he had received no message from StarClan. There had been the vision of himself in the stream, wearing the glory of LionClan. He thought again of Bluestar's prophecy that 4 will become 2, Lion and Tiger will join in battle. Suddenly, understanding dawned on Firestar like a ray of sunlight striking through branches. 4 clans would become 2. Did that mean ThunderClan must join with WindClan? Firestar needs to work on his critical thinking skills. Anyone with... I know this is a kid's series. I know that, but anyone with a brain can figure out that once TigerStar named his little cult TigerClan, that LionClan would be a thing. So, Firestar is so slow. I love him. "We're still here, Firestar." Dustpelt's voice disturbed his thoughts. Firestar started. "Sorry," he meowed. "I've called you here to welcome the 3 RiverClan cats we rescued. You all know Mistyfoot and Featherpaw and Stormpaw, Graystripe's kids. I think we should offer them a place in ThunderClan until it's safe for them to go home." Murmuring broke out around the clearing as he made the suggestion. Most cats agreed with him, Firestar could see, but a few others were looking uncertain. Longtail was the first to voice his doubts. "That's all very well, Firestar, and I'm sorry for what they've been through, but if they stay here, what are they going to eat? It's the middle of Leafbear. We've got our work cut out feeding ourselves. I'll hunt for them." Graystripe sprang up to face the clan. "I can feed all 3 of them, and more of the clan as well." "We're not helpless, you know," added Mistyfoot. "Give us a day or 2 to get stronger, and we'll hunt for ourselves and you as well." Mousefur got up and spoke directly to Firestar. "It's not a question of who's going to hunt. This is a harder Leafbear than usual after the fire. We're all hungry, and we'll need all the strength we can get if we're going to have to fight this TigerClan. I say they should go home." Sandstorm leaped to her paws before Firestar could speak. "They can't go home," she pointed out. "Weren't you listening? They'll be murdered if they do, like Stonefur. Do you want it to be known that ThunderClan sent cats to their death?" Brackenfur added. Mousefur looked down at her paws, anger making her fur bristle. "It's worth mentioning," Whitestar meowed calmly, "that all these cats are half ThunderClan. They have a right to ask us for shelter." From his vantage point on the top of the high rock, Firestar saw a ripple of shock pass through his cats as they turned to look at Mistyfoot, standing like a living shadow of their former leader. Remembering the hostility some of them had shown when Mistyfoot and Stonefur had shared tongues with the dead Bluestar, Firestar realized that Whitestorm was taking quite a risk in reminding them. But this time there was no hostility. Even Mousefur and Longtail stayed silent. The story of what had happened beside the Bone Hill had swung the sympathy of the clan over to the RiverClan cats. The warriors relaxed, their shock subsiding, and there were a few murmurs of agreement with what Whitestorm had said. Okay, even if they weren't half-clans, sending them back to their deaths is morally wrong on all levels. They're like, "No, they're not part of our clan." And then Whitestorm brings up that they're actually half ThunderClan, and suddenly it's okay? Like, what are we doing? Firestar looked down at the RiverClan cats where they sat at the base of the rock with Graystripe and Cinderpelt. "Welcome to ThunderClan," he meowed. Mistyfoot bowed her head in gratitude. "Thank you, Firestar. We won't forget this. It was the right thing to do," Firestar meowed. "I just hope you'll feel completely better soon." "They'll be fine, Firestar," meowed Cinderpelt. "All they need is good food and a warm place to sleep." "Yes, there was no bedding in that horrible hole," Featherpaw fretted, her eyes wide and troubled. "You don't need to think about that anymore," Mistyfoot promised with a comforting lick. "Just concentrate on getting strong again. As soon as you're fit, we'll have to get on with your training." Firestar remembered that Mistyfoot was Featherpaw's mentor. He was wondering about the difficulties of training an apprentice in unfamiliar territory when Graystripe broke in on his thoughts. "Stonefur was Stormpaw's mentor, so he'll need another one now. Is it okay if I mentor him myself?" "Good idea," Firestar meowed, and was rewarded by the glow of pride and pleasure in Graystripe's eyes as he looked at his son. "We'll hold the ceremony right away. He wasn't sure that it was necessary, given that Stormpaw wasn't truly a member of ThunderClan, but there was something inside him that longed to make contact with StarClan through the old familiar rituals. Not the nepotism. I mean, it is kind of the easiest thing to do. I think we have bigger fish to fry than worrying about nepotism and fairness. I still think it's kind of like, okay, yeah, of course. Leaping down from the high rock, he beckoned to Stormpaw with his tail. Stormpaw came to stand in front of him, still shaky on his paws but holding his head high. Stormpaw, you have already begun your apprenticeship, Firestar began. Stonefur was a noble mentor, and ThunderClan grieves for him. Now you must continue to learn the skills of a warrior under a new mentor. Turning to Graystripe, he went on. Graystripe, you will continue Stormpaw's training. You have borne suffering with a warrior spirit, and I expect you to pass on what you have learned to this apprentice. He really said, dang, your life sucked, and so does your son's. Hopefully y'all can bond over that. Jeez. Graystripe nodded solemnly, then padded over to his son and touched noses with him. Firestar caught Brackenfur's eye. The young Tom was obviously pleased that his old mentor had a new apprentice. Firestar brought the meeting to an end and descended from the high rock. Glancing around, he spotted Sandstorm not far away. Sandstorm, I want to ask you a favor. The ginger she-cat looked up at him. What is it? It's about Mistyfoot. She'll have trouble mentoring Featherpaw properly here. She doesn't know where the training places are, or the dangers, or the best places for prey. Firestar hesitated, not sure if what he was about to suggest was a good idea. Not long ago, he had chosen Brackenfur to mentor Tawnypaw, and Sandstorm had been deeply offended that he had passed her over. She might well take offense again at his new idea. Go on, he'd Sandstorm. I wanted to ask if you'd help Mistyfoot with Featherpaw's training. I can't think of any cat who would be better. Sandstorm gave him a long, measured look. You think you can get around me with a bit of flattery, do you? I don't... Sandstorm let out a purr of laughter. Well, maybe you can. Of course I'll help her, you stupid furball. I'll have a word with her now. Relief washed over Firestar. Thank you, Sandstorm. A loud wailing interrupted him. The cats still in the clearing were staring at the entrance from the gorse tunnel. Firestar could not see what had alarmed them, but he caught the tang of blood on the air, an unfamiliar cat scent. Thrusting his way through his warriors, Firestar reached the entrance. Limping out of the tunnel was a cat that was almost wounded beyond recognition. Blood dripped from a long gash in his flank. His fur was matted with sand and dust, and one eye was closed. Then Firestar made out the mottled dark pelt under the dirt and managed to distinguish the scent of WindClan. The newcomer was Mudclaw, barely able to stand from pain and exhaustion. Mudclaw, Firestar exclaimed. What happened? Mudclaw staggered toward him. You've got to help us, Firestar, he rasped. TigerClan is attacking our camp. Like I said, if it ain't one thing, it's another. That is the end of chapter 18. Nobody can catch a break in this episode. Really, if it ain't one thing, it's another. That's crazy. Alright, getting into chapter 19. Firestar takes a small patrol of warriors to WindClan. He leaves the rest of the warriors, as well as Whitestorm, back at camp, in case they get ambushed too. As they run towards the WindClan camp, Graystripe wonders if it's too late, given Mudclaw's state, and how wounded he was. Firestar knows this, but he wants to try to help anyway because of his sense of justice autism, but also because it's the right thing to do. Quote, as they drew nearer, the scent of ShadowClan was joined by a trace of RiverClan, mingling in a new scent that Firestar realized was the distinctive odor of TigerClan. They were near enough that he expected to hear the yowls of fighting cats, and the silence gripped his heart like cold claws. The battle must be over. Firestar slowed his pace as he and his patrol climbed the last slope toward the camp, his belly filling with dread at the thought of what they might find. Firestar slipped quietly up to the ridge where he could look down over the camp. There was a strong scent of WindClan in the air, along with the tang of blood and fear. A single eerie wail broke the silence as Firestar breasted the rise and saw what TigerStar had done. The hollow where the WindClan cats had their camp was lined with gorse bushes. A few yellow flowers still showed on the spiny branches. Beyond, in the center of the camp, Firestar could see cats huddled together, scarcely moving. As he watched, a tortoiseshell queen raised her head and let out another chilling wail. Morning Flower! Firestar exclaimed. Flicking his tail for his warriors to follow him, he raced down through the bushes and into the camp. Bursting out into the open, he was confronted by the WindClan leader, Tallstar. The black and white Tom's fur was torn and covered in dust, and his long tail drooped with exhaustion. Firestar, his voice was rough with pain. I knew you would come. Not soon enough. I'm sorry. The WindClan leader shook his head helplessly. You did your best. He turned toward the cats who crouched on the floor of the clearing, too shocked or injured to move. You can see what TigerStar has done. Tell us what happened, urged Graystripe. Tallstar twitched his ears. You can see. TigerStar and his warriors crept up on us. We had no warning, and in any case, there were too many for us to fight. Firestar padded forward, feeling his stomach turn over. None of the WindClan warriors had escaped without wounds. Deadfoot, the WindClan deputy, was lying very still with blood trickling from a gash on his flank. Next to him lay Running Brook, a she-cat whose pale gray fur was hanging off her shoulder in clumps. Their eyes stared at nothing, as if they couldn't believe what had happened. Firestar could scarcely believe it either. This had been a completely unprovoked attack. There had been no warning at the last gathering. TigerStar had gained no extra territory for his clan. The purpose of this attack had been nothing more than to bring fear to the WindClan cats. "Hey, Firestar!" A weak voice made Firestar turn to see his old friend One Whisker. The brown tabby warrior was lying on his side with deep wounds to his throat and shoulder. Barkface, the WindClan medicine cat, was pressing cobwebs to them, but the blood still oozed out sluggishly. "One Whisker," Firestar trailed off, not knowing what to say. One Whisker's eyes were bright with pain. "It's not as bad as it looks," he grunted. "You should have seen the other cat." "One Whisker dad jokes? Okay, I like him." "I wish we'd come in time," Firestar meowed. "I wish you had too. Look over there." One Whisker turned his head and Barkface snapped, "Keep still." Firestar followed the injured warrior's gaze. Morningflower, the tortoiseshell queen who had been wailing aloud, was crouched over the motionless body of another cat. A small body, with torn ginger and white fur. "No!" Firestar's throat closed, so he had to choke out the words. "Not Gorsepaw." "TigerStar killed him." One Whisker's voice was tight with rage. "He pinned him down in the center of the clearing with his warriors around him so none of us could get close enough to stop him. He said he was going to kill him to show the rest of us what we could expect if we refused to join him." Firestar closed his eyes, unable to bear the blood-stained scene in front of him, yet all he could see was an image of the massive leader of TigerClan, paws holding down the helpless apprentice while he challenged the WindClan warriors. A shiver ran through him. He thought back to the time that he and Graystripe had traveled to find WindClan and bring them home after ShadowClan had driven them into exile. Firestar had carried Gorsepaw, then a tiny kit, back across the Thunderpath. All of that was wasted now, thanks to TigerStar. Firestar could not help wondering if TigerStar had deliberately chosen Gorsepaw because he knew of Firestar's bond with the young apprentice. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. TigerStar is unhealthily obsessed with Firestar. Oh my god, doomed yowie. No, just kidding. That's disgusting. TigerStar deserves nothing. Opening his eyes, Firestar left One Whisker and padded softly over to Morningflower, touching her shoulder with his nose to draw her attention. She looked up, her beautiful eyes dulled with grief. "Firestar," she whispered. "I didn't ever think you'd save my son for this. What have StarClan done to us?" Firestar crouched down beside Morningflower, pressing himself against her side to comfort her, and touched his nose to Gorsepaw's fur. "He was growing into a fine warrior," he murmured. The sound of another cat roused him. He looked up to see Graystripe. His friend bowed his head too, and touched Gorsepaw's fur, mewing a few words of comfort to Morningflower. "Firestar, what do you want us to do?" he asked, raising his head again. "We can't just leave them like this." With a last gentle lick of Morningflower's ear, Firestar stood up and moved away with his friend. "Take 2 or 3 cats on a patrol," he ordered. 1 or 2 of WindClan too, if any of them are fit. They'll know their boundaries better than us. Check to make sure that there are no TigerClan warriors still lurking around. If you find any, you know what to do. Chase them off, or kill them if you have to. And bring back as much fresh kill as you can. WindClan need to eat, and they're not capable of hunting for themselves." "Right," meowed Graystripe. He called Sandstorm, Cloudtail, and Dustpaw, and checked with Tallstar for permission to patrol in his territory. Tallstar agreed gratefully, and ordered Webfoot, who had escaped with torn fur and scratches, to go with them and show them the best places for prey. "We need to talk," the WindClan leader mewed to Firestar as he watched the patrol leave. "TigerStar left a message for you." Firestar pricked his ears. "A message?" "He wants both of us to meet him tomorrow at 4 Trees at Sunhigh," Tallstar replied. "He says he's tired of waiting. He wants our decision about whether we'll join TigerClan or not. And he's shown us what he'll do if we refuse." He flicked his tail toward the wounded warriors and the limp body of the dead apprentice, all his grief contained in the simple gesture. Firestar met his gaze, and the 2 leaders shared a long look of understanding. "I'd rather die than join TigerStar's clan," Firestar declared at last. "So would I," agreed Tallstar. "And I'm glad to hear you say that. Bluestar was right about you all along. Many cats thought you were too young and inexperienced when she made you her deputy, but you're showing your quality now. The Force needs cats like you." Firestar bowed his head, humbled by the unexpected praise. "So, we'll meet tomorrow at 4 Trees," he meowed. Tallstar nodded gravely. "Take my advice, Firestar, and bring some of your warriors with you. When we refuse to join TigerStar, I don't imagine he'll let us walk away without a fight." Firestar felt chilled to the tip of his tail. He could see that the older cat was right. "Then if we have to, we'll fight together?" "Together," Tallstar promised. "Our clans will join together like a lion to fight the tiger who prowls our forest." Insert Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme here. Oh my god, it's just like the Vision! Guys, it's just like the Vision! It's just like the Vision! No way! I love reading children's literature because, like, it's funny to me as an adult, but as a kid, you'd be like, whoa, oh my gosh, it's like the prophecy. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh my god, it's like the prophecy. Wow, who could have guessed? Anyway, Firestar stared at him in amazement. Tallstar could not know of Bluestar's prophecy, nor of Firestar's vision by the stream, and yet he had echoed the words of the prophecy. 4 will become 2. Lion and Tiger will join in battle. Had StarClan spoken to him as well? Firestar knew that the WindClan leader would not say. What passed between clan leader and the spirits of their warrior ancestors was for no other ears. But this echo reminded Firestar that they were leaders together, with the power of 2 mighty clans behind them. Gazing steadily at the noble black and white cat, Firestar meowed, I swear by StarClan that my clan will be the friend of yours, to fight this evil side by side. I swear it too, Tallstar replied solemnly. Firestar raised his head, tasting the air, which still carried a faint trace of the raiding cats. He knew that this vow would run through their blood like cold fire until TigerStar had been driven from the forest, or until they lost their 9th lives trying. That is the end of chapter 19, and that is where we're going to stop for today. War is coming quick. You don't have to be Einstein to figure out that when Firestar and Tallstar refuse to join TigerClan, there's going to be war. Like, they're up against Hitler right now. There's no way war doesn't happen. Yeah, well, this episode was a doozy. Seriously, it was thing after thing after thing, like literally no breaks for anybody involved. It is the last book of the arc, so everything's gonna come to a head. And we don't have that many chapters left. We only have 10 left, because we start chapter 20 next week. We only have 10 chapters left in the book. Things are gonna get crazy. Thank you so much for joining me. Like and subscribe if you are tuning in on YouTube. Rate me 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. And yeah, also I put a poll up on my Twitter account about what I should read next. I put it to about a week, so it actually might be expired by the time this episode comes out. But if you have any thoughts, you can chime in the comments under that post on my Twitter account. I'll post it on Blue Sky too if they do polls. Yeah, I figured that would be a better way because Spotify comments I don't check super often, and it's hard to keep track of because this podcast is gaining popularity. You want to know how many followers I have now? 67. 67. I just had to make that joke at least once. I'll never make it again, I promise. Over 4,000 plays and downloads, which is insane. Thank you guys. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad more and more people are tuning into this podcast, because this is what I love. I love this stupid series. It's not stupid, but I love this series. I'm almost 25 years old at this point. I love this series so much. I like reading aloud and like doing the voices and stuff to make it seem more real. And then that way, like, I want to provide something that's, like, a mix between an audiobook and a podcast. I mean, it is a podcast, but, like, instead of just sitting through an audiobook, I like having commentary on it and providing my own thoughts. Especially these actually, most of the books I haven't reread in years, if not over a decade. So, obviously I remember what happens because I have Warrior Cat's autism, but there's some stuff, especially in these earlier books, that I just don't remember. So, it's been great, yeah. Anyway, that was my tangent. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you back here next week when we see if Lion and Tiger do in fact meet in battle. May StarClan light your path.